Well, speaking of women and Muslims, it's really striking. Khalid Abu al-Fadl is a distinguished scholar of Islamic law, and he counts in the history of Islam 2,500 women who were notable imams, narrators of hadith, and poets. Today, he says there are none. So what happened to the woman in Islam? Where is she now? And why is her voice so quiet?
If you analyze such human achievements as poetry, it's about love and romance. Islam does not give men and women, but especially women, the permission to be individuals, to fall in love and imagine what it is to be that kind of romance. Storytelling. Most of the novels I read today, and I've been reading Western novels, are about criticizing their own society. Islam does not allow or accept criticism. Imagining figures as outsiders who look on the inside, but then speak out from the inside. Agents of Islam know that that hollows the system completely. That is what leads to revolutions. There are women born into Islam who are talented poets, who are talented writers even today, talented storytellers, capable of the deepest set of emotions, but they cannot express it. If they do, the consequences are too high, the price is too high. Still, you see in places like Iran, Sudan recently, with a pair of trousers, even Saudi Arabia, you introduced me to a young woman who decided not to be a part of that, and in her own way is protesting. So I don't belong to the category of people who say it is possible to snuff out, to stifle the human imagination. Islam is a very, very, very difficult, if applied, it's very difficult, and the obstacles it puts in the way of individual freedom are great. But still, it cannot snuff out life. It cannot snuff out the imagination. And for me, radical Islam is it's just a matter of time before it goes like Nazism and communism and all of these isms. Before it goes into, I don't know who the quote is from, but the trash can of history.
But I think the point that Abu al-Fadl was making is that Islam has changed with regard to women in terms of allowing them. You even mentioned Aisha, the Prophet's wife, who had a role and who actually taught others, and Khadija, who had a business, who operated the camel supply. You know, I mean, this was a period of, in Islam's own origins, women had a more prominent role than they seem to have today, and it seems to have decreased over time. And what stuns me about your story is I know so many Muslim women who have, your story's not unique. You know, many Muslim women have endured great sense of oppression. And it's not surprising to me that that kind of behavior would stir up a furious response, as you have given voice to. But it's such a singular voice. That's why I wonder why there are not more of you.
Well, first let me start by defining Islam as a set of beliefs as opposed to a genetic makeup of a people. It is not genetic to be Muslim. If you were born to a different set of parents in Rome or in the Aborigines, you'd be something else. You would believe in a different set of moral framework. So to be Arab is not necessarily to be Muslim. To be born in Pakistan or in Somalia doesn't necessarily mean that you are born with a DNA that says you have to be and you are Islam and you can evolve. That's one thing. It's good to keep this distinction in mind, because when some of the people who disagree with me and are defending Islam, they bring the story of Khadija, the first wife of Muhammad, as being a caravan leader, a merchant, an entrepreneur in her own right. Remember, she was operating in the pre-Islamic period. When Muhammad married her, I think she was about 40 years old, which at the time was very old. And he was much younger. So that is before he founded Islam. Once Islam was established as a political framework, I don't want to talk of it as a nation state yet, because state formation is something that I would say is really typically Western. But when Islam as commands from God and organizing the social order, when those two are put together, the first thing that was established was that women needed a male guardian. That is not only in the Quran and in the Hadith, but anywhere where Sharia or Islamic law is established, women need a male guardian. Now, if you are lucky, and some women are lucky, their male guardian, their father, born in different circumstances, would send them to school, would send them to colleges. They can take. But most often, we see that male guardians don't do that. And the male guardians, as required by Sharia today, in the 21st century, 1400 years after Islam was founded, do not give women permission to own their own bodies, to complete schools, to think, and to become their own persons. They're afraid of female sexuality. So there is, and I hear it, there are women who tell me, I pray to the same God who gives my husband permission to beat me, but what else do I have? And sometimes I just think we should offer them another God. Because I can do without a God, but if most people can't, then maybe the competition would be just offer a God of love, offer a God of entrepreneur, something like that. But my response to that is I'm not convinced by people who say Islam has changed. I would be convinced if two things were to happen. If the Prophet Muhammad were to be declared fallible, and I think in the Catholic evolution, the Pope has come to be considered to be fallible, maybe not formally, but informally, then Muhammad would no longer be the lawgiver. And I think there are organized attempts in Turkey to do this, to declare Sharia, or the example of the body of Hadith, to declare that redundant and historic. A second thing would be to take off the read-only lock on the Quran. Right now, you cannot argue with the Quran. It's God's word. You can't change a letter. All you have to do is obey it. If the Quran were to gain a status like that of the Bible, then the road to separating religion from power, that road would open up, and then Islam would be reformed. And right now, beyond Irshad Manji and a few Turkish scholars, I haven't seen any attempt that is as organized, as powerful, as well-resourced as the radicals.
I've often thought that, in Mecca, it used to be that the four schools of Islam were taught openly and freely. And now only the Wahhabi trend is permitted. And just that one change alone to allow Islam to become diverse rather than increasingly Wahhabized would open up that religion to become more tolerant.
that is, I would say, that is the old way of thinking about Islam. Islam can and only will change only, forget about changing Islam. Muslims will change, will develop and evolve and modernize in Mecca or in Muslim countries. That is the old way of thinking. Why is that the old way of thinking? Because today there are about 15 to 20 million Muslims living in Western countries that are already modern. You don't have to go to Mecca and read the 4 schools of thought and go through that in Wahhabism and that kind of nonsense. And if you look at any, and I don't know how polls in Muslim countries are reliable, because for a poll, for an opinion to be valid, you have to be free and you have to be informed. But there are now so many Gallup polls, Pew polls, journalists, so many reports saying that there are more Muslims who would like to move to the West, to have a green card or immigrate to Europe. And given that reality, I just wouldn't wait for Mecca. It's just a question of, yeah, why?
Actually, this reminds me of a joke. I'm sorry.
Joke. Tell a joke. Sorry.
When I spent a lot of time in Egypt, and it's the capital, the joke capital of the Middle East. And you can't, a day without a good joke in Egypt is a terrible day. But just across the Red Sea in Saudi Arabia, I spent the first time 3 months there. And when I left, I thought, I hadn't heard a single joke. Not one joke, and it's just not that far away, you know. So the next time I went, I asked, you know, do you guys tell jokes? And, oh yeah, we tell jokes all the time, we're very funny. And tell me like a really good Saudi joke, and you know, a lot of silence. So finally I got the Saudi joke. I'm sorry, I had to do this. And it is a Somali and an Egyptian and a Saudi are asked, what is your opinion of eating meat? And the Somali says, what is eating? And the Egyptian says, what is meat? And the Saudi says, what's an opinion? Now that we're in the lighter part of the program, when I talk to people about you, you know, the different ways that they identify you and identify with you, you are black, you are African, you're a woman, you're atheist, you're conservative from the American perspective, and you're really beautiful. Those are the responses I get. How do you identify yourself? Which of those things do you feel is most characteristic of who you are when you wake up in the morning and you think about what's important to you? What part of your identity is governing that?
I promise you, I never wake up in the morning thinking, gosh, what am I, an African? And golly, what am I, a conservative? And I don't. I wake up in the morning thinking, how will I make these trips through the day? I wanted to pack this and forgot to pack it. It's really very mundane. And this is what, even though a life may seem interesting and romantic and great out there, you still have to go through this daily stuff. I think identity, mine, yours, is not static and is not one-dimensional. I do feel I am a woman. I can't change that. I'm 1.72 meters. That's a given. But intellectually, I know that I'm evolving. And the reason why I don't want to call myself a conservative is I don't have a set of given truths anymore. I have my values, and I think the value of freedom is absolute. The value of life is absolute. I don't have anything else that's absolute beyond that. Everything else is just a question